The Rosewood Massacre stands as a stark reminder of the brutal reality of racial terror in America. In January 1923, this peaceful, predominantly black town in Florida was violently destroyed by white mobs. Fueled by a false accusation and driven by racial hatred, the mob unleashed a wave of terror that left Rosewood in ruins and its residents scattered and traumatized. The Rosewood Massacre serves as a chilling testament to the destructive power of prejudice and the importance of remembering and learning from this dark chapter in American history. The spark of false accusation ignites racial tension. The violence that engulfed Rosewood was sparked by a lie, a false accusation with devastating consequences. The town, already simmering with racial tension, was a powder keg waiting to explode. A white woman named Fannie Taylor claimed she had been assaulted by a black man. This accusation, made in an era of deep racial segregation and prejudice, quickly inflamed tensions between the white and black communities in the area. The alleged assault, never proven and shrouded in inconsistencies, became the pretext for a horrific display of racial violence. The community, already divided by racial lines, found itself on the brink of chaos. The incident occurred just days after a Ku Klux Klan rally in a nearby town, further heightening racial animosity. The Klan, a white supremacist organization known for its use of violence and intimidation against black people, had already created an atmosphere of fear and suspicion. Taylor's accusation, regardless of its veracity, provided the justification the mob needed to unleash its fury upon Rosewood. The town, which had been a relatively peaceful community, was suddenly thrust into a nightmare of violence and destruction. The Klan's presence in the area had already set the stage for conflict. Their rally, filled with hate speech and calls for violence, had left the community on edge. When Taylor's accusation surfaced, it was the spark that ignited the fire. The mob, fueled by racial hatred and emboldened by the Klan's rhetoric, descended upon Rosewood with a ferocity that shocked the nation. Homes were burned, lives were lost, and the community was left in ruins. The tragedy of Rosewood serves as a stark reminder of the destructive power of racism and the devastating impact of false accusations. It is a chapter in history that underscores the need for justice, equality, and the importance of standing against hate. Days of terror. Violence engulfs Rosewood. For 6 harrowing days, Rosewood endured a reign of terror. White mobs, armed with guns and fueled by hatred, descended upon the town, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Homes and businesses were systematically burned to the ground, reducing the once thriving community to smoldering ashes. Residents, caught off guard and vastly outnumbered, were forced to flee for their lives. They sought refuge in nearby swamps and woods, hiding from the mob that hunted them relentlessly. Stories of survival emerged from those terrifying days, tales of courage and resilience in the face of unimaginable brutality. Scattered and silenced, the devastating aftermath. By the time the violence subsided, Rosewood lay in ruins, a stark symbol of racial hatred's destructive power. The once thriving town, known for its close-knit community and vibrant culture, was reduced to ashes and rubble. The streets that once echoed with laughter and life were now silent, haunted by the memories of what had transpired. The town, once a vibrant community, was completely deserted, its residents scattered far and wide. Families who had lived there for generations were forced to flee, leaving behind their homes, their belongings, and their way of life. The sense of loss was palpable as the survivors tried to make sense of the chaos that had upended their lives. The physical destruction was absolute, but the emotional and psychological scars ran far deeper. The trauma of witnessing such violence and losing loved ones left an indelible mark on the survivors. The pain of their experiences was something they would carry with them for the rest of their lives, a constant reminder of the fragility of peace and the destructive power of hatred. Survivors, many of whom had witnessed unspeakable horrors and lost loved ones, were left to rebuild their lives, carrying the trauma of the massacre with them. They faced the daunting task of starting over, often in unfamiliar places, with little more than the clothes on their backs. The resilience they showed in the face of such adversity is a testament to the human spirit's capacity for endurance and hope. The official death toll remains disputed, but it is believed that at least 6 black residents and 2 white attackers were killed. The true extent of the loss, however, may never be fully known. Many victims were buried in unmarked graves, their identities lost to history. The community's grief was compounded by the lack of recognition and justice for those who had perished. However, the true number of victims may never be known. The legacy of Rosewood is a somber reminder of the consequences of unchecked hatred and violence. It serves as a call to remember and honor those who suffered, and to strive for a future where such atrocities are never repeated. Buried history, decades of silence and denial. In the aftermath of the massacre, a chilling silence descended upon Rosewood. The survivors, traumatized and fearful of further violence, were reluctant to speak about the horrors they had endured. The mainstream media, largely indifferent to the plight of black communities, paid little attention to the events in Rosewood. The massacre was not a topic discussed openly, and no official investigation was ever conducted. The lack of justice and accountability allowed the perpetrators to escape punishment for their crimes. The story of Rosewood seemed destined to be forgotten, buried beneath the weight of silence and denial. Unearthing the truth. The fight for justice begins. For decades, the story of Rosewood remained largely unknown, a hidden chapter in America's history of racial violence. However, the silence was finally broken in the 1980s when survivors and descendants of the massacre began to share their stories. Journalists and historians drawn to the story's power and injustice began to investigate the events of 1923. Their work helped to bring the story of Rosewood to light, exposing the brutality of the massacre and the decades of silence that followed. The fight for justice had begun. A landmark decision: reparations for Rosewood. The efforts of survivors, journalists, and activists culminated in a landmark decision in 1994. The Florida legislature, after a thorough investigation, confirmed the historical accuracy of the Rosewood Massacre, passed a bill providing $2.1 million in reparations to survivors and descendants of the massacre. This historic decision marked the first time a U.S. state had approved such compensation for victims of racial violence. While no amount of money could ever erase the pain and suffering endured by the people of Rosewood, the reparations served as a long-overdue acknowledgement of the injustice they had suffered, remembering Rosewood legacy and commemoration. The legacy of the Rosewood Massacre extends far beyond the events of that tragic week in January 1923. The small, predominantly African-American town of Rosewood, Florida, was forever scarred by the violence and destruction that took place. Families were torn apart, homes were burned to the ground, and the community was left in ruins. The impact of this tragedy resonated through generations, leaving an indelible mark on the collective memory of those who survived and their descendants. It serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of racial prejudice and the importance of confronting and learning from the darkest chapters of American history. The Rosewood Massacre is a poignant example of how unchecked hatred and bigotry can lead to unimaginable suffering and loss. By remembering Rosewood, we honor the victims and acknowledge the resilience of those who endured such hardship. This remembrance also serves as a call to action, urging us to strive for a more just and equitable society. In 2004, the site of Rosewood was designated as a Florida Heritage Landmark. This designation was a significant step in recognizing the historical importance of Rosewood and ensuring that the events of 1923 are not forgotten. The landmark serves as a place of reflection and education, where visitors can learn about the history of Rosewood and the broader context of racial violence in America. A historical marker now stands as a testament to the town that once was and the lives that were forever changed by the events of the massacre. This marker is not just a symbol of remembrance, but also a reminder of the importance of preserving history and educating future generations about the past. It stands as a beacon of hope, encouraging us to confront our history with honesty and integrity. The Rosewood Heritage Foundation, established in 1994, works tirelessly to preserve the memory of Rosewood and educate the public about its history. Through various initiatives, including educational programs, community events, and historical preservation efforts, the foundation ensures that the legacy of Rosewood lives on. Their work is crucial in fostering a deeper understanding of the past and promoting a future where such tragedies are never repeated. Rosewood on screen, bringing the story to light. The story of Rosewood reached a wider audience in 1997 with the release of the film Rosewood, directed by John Singleton. While fictionalized, the film depicted the horrors of the massacre and sparked further discussion and reflection on the legacy of racial violence in the United States. Rosewood brought the story to a new generation, ensuring that the memory of the massacre and its victims would not be forgotten. The film's release served as a reminder of the importance of confronting injustice and the power of storytelling in preserving history.